Good morning. Welcome to Ask the Admin, brought to you by iBailey. Today's topic, we'll be talking about visual flows. We'll go through and talk about what they are, how to use them, and how to build them. And we're going to build a flow for you as we go. Myself, John Jones, I'm a solution architect with iBailey, and Fred Barron, our technical architect, will be your presenters today. As we go through this, we're going to be asking you some questions. We're going to start by throwing a poll up right now for you to take a look at. What color is the Summer 16 logo? We'll have a couple of these polls come out throughout the session as we go for you to ask questions, or for you to answer and interact with us a little bit. This is meant to be an interactive session, so if you have questions, please feel free to ask those questions to us, and we'll answer those as best we can as we along. It looks like we've got a number of answers coming in here. All right, we'll close this out. See, we've got some different answers here. We're asking the color of the Summer 16 logo, which is new and just coming out. The previous logo was a butterfly, but it has now changed. The new logo for Summer 16 is some fireworks. All right, today we're going to take a little trip. We do every week. As I mentioned, this is meant to be an interactive webinar. Please ask your questions as we go. We're happy to take those. A few weeks ago when we started this, we started with a new org, so we encourage you to follow along with us on our YouTube channel. You can view past recordings, and anything that we do going forward will be posted there as well, so you can go back and follow along what's going on there. We are building on previous work each week, so we're building up this company as we go. And again, bring your questions. We love questions. We're working with a company, Universal Boxes, which is a subsidiary to Universal Containers. We're doing boxes and packaging items as kind of the focus. All right, so let's jump in here. What are flows and what can they be used for? So flows, we click coding. So this allows you to do a lot of things that would normally have to be done with code without using code, and it's a tool that any admin can learn to use. It uses a process flow type, look, and feel. If anybody has built processes with like Visio or flow charting, that's basically what you're doing here. The difference is that as you build your process, you actually get to tell the system what it's doing for each of the objects that you do. Flows are great because a lot of really fun things for us. For instance, running some complex automations. There's a lot of really good automation tools we talked about last week within Salesforce, but for the most part, they have limitations as to how much they can do. With flows, you can run complex automations, you can do cross-object, you can reach through the system and the database to pretty much any information that you want to grab. And then you can manipulate that and work with it and put it out somewhere else. You can also link multiple flows together. So if you've got a really complex process, you can create 3 or 4 different flows to complete the process, and then link those all together in the end to make one final process that just goes together. And to the user, it's seamless. They don't realize that on the back end they're jumping through multiple flows. A flow must be fired from either a process builder, code, or a button or link. The flow that we build today is going to be fired from a button. We're going to show you how to build that. But there is really good information on how to do it from a process builder or from code. Some things that you can use flows for, that's a big question that people want to know. So you can use it for guided selling. So you can create a process that's on the screen and help walk somebody through selling a product. You can do call scripting. I've seen this done a number of times for support centers. You call into somewhere and they've got a flow that they pull up on the screen and it walks them through. They ask you questions. Based on those answers, it takes you through different troubleshooting steps. That can all be done within a flow. And then each of those steps can be recorded to a case or whatever object you want it to. You can perform multiple updates from a single screen. So this is really cool. This is one of those cross-object things that makes flows very powerful. You can have one screen come up, you can enter a bunch of information, and then you can push that information out to multiple objects. Makes updating lots of information really quick, really easy. You can reduce training with building a flow like this. It can be really easy to just hand somebody the finished product and say, here's your process, walk through it. And you don't have to do a whole lot of training. They just walk through the screens. You can also use flows to show how to do things. So you can, instead of having to get up and stand up in front of a bunch of people all the time, you can use a flow and hand that to them and say, go through this, and the flow can actually teach them how to use the system once it's built out. So there's some information about what a flow is, some things that you can use it for. So let's look at our example today. So, yes,
John,
go ahead.
before we move into this next part, we've got a question here. Why would you want to link multiple flows together?
That's a real good question. When you're building a flow, it can get pretty, if it's a complex flow, then working with it on the screen, as you'll see in a little bit, it can get pretty big and pretty complex to walk through in one screen. And so it's a good practice. This is a coding practice, really, and we kind of implement that into flows as well. If you break up your master process into small chunks and then link those all together in the end, it makes it easier to troubleshoot, it makes it easier to build, and it makes it easier to follow what's happening because you've got smaller chunks to look at. You can take each piece at a time instead of having one great big flow that you've got to scroll around and try to figure out. Thank you. That's a really great question.
It doesn't look like we've got any other questions. Let's go ahead and move into Universal Box's current sales process.
All right. So the current process is the sales reps, they're on the phone or out on site visiting with somebody and they get an order, so they write it down on a notepad or something that they've got on hand. Then they come back to the office and they're going to enter that information onto a spreadsheet. Once the sale closes, they send the spreadsheet to the fulfillment team, and the fulfillment team then takes that spreadsheet and the information there, they build out the order, and send it on. Pretty manual process, lots of room for pretty standard process from a lot of things that we see as people are moving into systems like Salesforce. So what do we want the system to turn into? With the new system, they want the sales rep to be able to pull up Salesforce while on site, walk through the process and enter the box dimensions and other information about the sale right into Salesforce, and then have the option to set the opportunity to one right there. They may collect the money and close the deal right there on site before they walk out the door, so they can have everything all set up and done in the system before they leave, and they don't have to worry about it. And as they've done that, the opportunity is created. And like I said, it's created, it's in the system. It may be open, it may be closed, but it's all there. All right, I went through some of that kind of quick. Right before we jump into the demo, we've got another poll to throw up just to kind of pull your memory a little bit. So let's throw this poll up here real quick before we jump into the demo. Which of the following can you not do with a flow? So I have you take a look at these. There's a lot of things that flows can do, there's a couple of things that flows can't do. We've got to mix up a couple of ideas out there coming in of what it can't do. We do time-based actions, and we haven't gone through everything flows can do, but there's a lot there. Calling Apex code, updating fields, launch another flow, send outbound messages. All right, let's take a look at the responses here. So we've got some that have said time-based actions, we've got send outbound messages without code, and we've got update fields. So part of what we talked about was updating records and information, so you can update fields within a flow. You can do time-based actions in flows. There is a piece there to allow you to do that. You can launch other flows as well. Sending outbound messages without code is only possible in one place of the system, and that is inside of a workflow rule. In order to send outbound messages within a flow, you have to have an Apex plugin, so that will require code to do that. That's not a default behavior of flows. Along with that, you can call Apex code from flow through plugins, like a plugin to send outbound messages. So send outbound messages without code would be the correct answer on that one. All right, we're going to flip over here, and Fred is going to take over for a little bit and give us a demo, and he's going to walk us through building our new sales process for universal boxes.
All right. I'm going to get the screen share going here. As John said, flows are they're a way to create automation with a point and click. So what we've got here, to get to our flows, you can simply go to Setup. You can go through the menu, or I just type Flow in the search box here. And we've got our, under Workflows and Approvals, we have flows. So I've got a couple of them that I've built. I'm going to show you this one first. And as you'll see, as we were talking about earlier, it looks a lot like a flow chart. We're going to start up here at the top, and we're going to work our way down. And I'm going to run this to just show you what this does. This is a very, very simple flow. It's going to ask for some information. I'm going to put in my, start with my name first. And then it's going to make a decision based on that information. And it's telling me I'm not Dave, so it's not letting me finish here. If I put in Dave, then it comes up with a completely different thing. I'll show you how I did this really quick, and then we're going to get into our actual sales process. So we've got a screen. This is input. We're making a decision based on that input, and based on that decision, we're showing different things to the end user. So pretty basic flow here, but I wanted to show you what we've got. We've got our toolbar over here on the left. So let's go ahead and before we do that, I want to show you exactly what we're doing today. I'm going to go in here to an account. And we've already created this button. We'll show you how to do all of this in just a second. But we've got our flow here, and it's going to ask us for a quantity, the box size, height, width, depth. So I'm just going to make one that's 12 inches by 12 inches by 12 inches. Nice cubic foot there. Go to the next screen. It's going to ask us what colors this box is going to be. We're going to do black, blue, and white. And this is all information that we'll use later for when we get into the fulfillment part of this org. And then here, this is what we were talking about earlier, is the client paid for the order. If we set yes, then it's going to set this new opportunity to 1. If we set no, it's going to leave it at prospecting. So let's go ahead and set it no. We're going to say they haven't paid yet. Our order has been recorded. So now we're back to the account. I'm going to pull up that opportunity. You'll see the opportunity has been created. It's created a line item for it. Everything is there ready to go. So let's go ahead and go through this and build out this flow. So we're going to fire up a new flow here. And the first thing that I am going to do is I'm going to do a lookup, and I'm using a fast lookup. The difference between a record lookup and a fast lookup. The fast lookup creates what we call an S object variable. All of the information is going to be stored in one variable. So I'm going to call this, we're going to look up the account. I want to look up an account. And this is where this part we're going to filter it. So we're going to tell it what records that we want to pull. If we don't put any filter in here, we're going to pull all of the records, and we don't want that. And this is pretty simple. We're going to create a new variable. Now, variables are going to hold data for us. So this is going to be the account ID, and this is going to be actually passed into our flow. So this is going to be, I'm going to go ahead and put an input-output. You could do input only here, but I'm going to do input-output so that in the future, if we want to pass this account ID to another flow, we can output that information. Okay. And then down here, you'll see it's asking me to create another variable. And again, this is going to be an S object variable. And we have S object collection. The difference between these two is the collection variable is multiple records. So if we wanted to say we want to select all the records that were created yesterday, then we would have to use the collection. Since we're only selecting one record, we can just use the regular S object. I'm going to give it a name. This one can be private, and it's going to be an account. Now this next option here, assign null to the variable. If we were using this variable earlier in the flow, and then we came to this, we have an option of either, if this record's not found, leaving the information that was there, or we can set it to null, which just means there's absolutely nothing there. I'm going to go ahead and check it. You don't really need to at this point, because this is going to be our first flow. And then what fields do we want? And I only really need one field on this. I want to get the account name. I'm going to show you why here in just a second. Okay, so we've got the account looked up. We're going to do one more fast lookup, and this will come later in our flow. We're going to be using this. And this one, we are going to look up a price book. You're going to have a price book to add a line item. So we're actually looking up a price book entry for our line item. And I've already set one. We're only using one item in our price book. And that is, I'm going to look it up by the product code. Product codes are unique. And I called it the product code box. If I go to the price book, you'll see that's the only item that I have in here. So I'm going to go ahead and hard code that in there. We're going to save this again into a new S object variable. I'm going to call it price book entry. We don't have to input or output this, so I'm going to leave it as private and set it to my price book. All right. And again, which fields that we want to query. Now, any field that you put in here will be available later in your flow. The only one that I really care about on this one is the ID. I could go in here and I could put it in a unit price. So if we wanted to, we could set standard prices and pull it. We're not doing that. We're letting the salespeople set the pricing. And then I'm just going to drag from this little diamond down to the next one, and you'll see it creates an arrow that's connecting those two together. All right, now let's get into some screens. So screens are the input for a user. So our first screen is we're going to get the box information. And what I want to do is I'm going to display some text on this page. I want to get the quantity, so I'm going to put a number on there. I'm actually going to put several numbers on here: box height, width, and depth. And you'll see this is all just generic information here. We double click, we can go to the next one. And on this one here, we are going to tell the sales rep which account that they're creating an order for. So I'm just going to say creating an order for, and if I start typing in name, it'll come up with a drop-down. And you'll see I have a price book entry, which I just noticed I misspelled. We'll go back and change that. And account data. So I want the name for the account. We'll go to this next one. This one is going to be quantity. And I want to set this to required. Next one is going to be our box height. And again, this one is, all of these are going to be required fields. You can't really create a box without one of these dimensions. And the last one is going to be the box depth. And again, I'm just going to tie these two together. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and save it. As you're working on these, you want to save it regularly. If something happens and you haven't saved it, you're going to lose your all your changes. I'm going to give it a name. There's three types of flows. There's a user provisioning flow, which we very rarely use. It can be used to create new users in the system. Regular flow, which is what this is going to be, you're getting input from the user. An auto-launched flow would be one that's launched from a process builder or code and doesn't require any user input. In fact, when you do an auto-launched flow, you can't activate it if you have any screens on the flow. We're going to do a regular flow. All right, and it's giving me one activation warning here. It's telling me that I don't have a start item. So to select your start item, if you just hover over one of these, you'll see the green circle up in the right-hand corner. You click on it, and that's going to make that your start item. So now when we run our flow, that's the one that it's going to start with. If we wanted to skip these first two, we could actually just start our flow down here. These ones would never be called. All right. Okay, let's move on to the next screen. The next one is we're going to get colors. And I have those drop-down lists on this one. So this is a little bit different. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to put some text on here. And on this one, we're going to do drop-down lists. We have three colors, so three drop-down lists. And put what, just got to give it a name. I was typing in the message. What colors would the client like? And I'm going to show you how to populate these drop-down lists from pick list values. So this is going to be color number 1. We're going to leave it as a text. And right here you have your choices, and you're going to have to create new choices. You have a choice, which will create a choice, regular choice later, dynamic record choice, and a pick list choice. We're going to do a pick list choice. I'm going to call it colors. This is going to come from a regular pick list, not a multi-select. And then in here we have our order fulfillment object that we've created in a previous training. And it has a color pick list, color 1, 2, and 3. And all of these have the same value. So I'm not going to change the sort order, and I'm going to click OK. So this pick list is going to be filled in with the colors from that object. So if we go and change that object's pick lists, then this flow will automatically change. So let's go ahead and do the second two here real quick. And you see I've already created this variable, so I can just reuse it. I don't have to create it again, which makes it really nice. We can very quickly go through these. Okay. So that's our next screen that the sales rep is going to see. Let's go ahead and link those. All right, now the next one that we're going to do is we're going to do a, I called it the paid order. And this is going to be a review of the order, and they can finish, put in the price and finish the order up. So what I want to do here is we're going to do, again, display text. And we are going to have a currency. This is going to be our total price. And then we're going to do radio buttons. So on this one, we are going to put in some fields to review the entire order. So we'll put in the height. And again, I'm just going to type it into the input field here. We have the width. And we have the depth. We also have our colors. We have color 1, color 2, color 3. And I'm going to do these ones a little bit different. So I've got color 1, you'll see it put it down. Anytime you select one of these, it always puts it at the end. So color 1, color 2, color 3, and then I'm just going to change the number since I already know the name of those variables. And the last thing that I want on this review is quantity. All right. So on this one, this is going to be our total price. We're going to make it a scale of 2. That'll make it so that we can add dollars and cents to it. And we're going to make it required. We've got to have a price on there. We'll put a label on this one as client paid for the order. And I don't want this long name for the name. This is the name that we pull up later. I'm just going to simply call it paid order. And this is going to be a Boolean. A Boolean is either true or false. And now we're going to add those choices. So I'm going to add a choice of yes. And again, it's going to be a Boolean. And yes is going to make it true. And we're going to add one more choice. No. And again, the same thing. It's going to be a Boolean. And this one is going to be false. All right. So we've got almost all of our screens. We've got one more screen that we'll have to create, but we're going to create that later in the process. Let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to run this, and I'm going to show you what this looks like when it runs. So the first thing you'll notice is I'm getting an unhandled fault error here. And the reason why is that I'm not passing in that account ID. So I'm going to go ahead and manually put that in. We just put it into the URL. Later we will add some fault handling. That's next week we'll do that to handle things like that if the account ID is not there. So you'll see that my screen's now looking like our one that we started out with. We've got our colors. Those are all populated from that pick list. We've got our review. We can put in our price. And we can decide, has the client paid for the order or not? And you see it comes back to the flow, and again, all this is doing is actually starting the flow all over again because there's no step after this. We haven't created the opportunity, we're just getting all of the data. Now this is where we were talking about separating out flows. If we wanted to, we could take all of these screens and put them into one flow where we actually build all the data, and we could build another flow that creates the record. All right, so let's go ahead and create the record. So we've got two things here. We've got a choice on this last one if the order is paid or not. So we're going to go ahead and put in a decision because we need to handle a paid order differently. And we're going to say, is this order paid? And in a decision, you've got different outcomes. Based on these outcomes, you can route your logic different ways. We call that paid order. And if this is true, I have to give it a unique name here. If this is true, then it's going to go to yes. We could add another outcome, but we're not going to. We actually do have another one, which is no, but we only have two, so I'm going to use yes, and I'm going to add a default outcome. The default outcome is the one that it's going to run if none of your other outcomes are true. So we'll put that in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do the yes branch first. So we're going to set the stage if the order is paid, and we're going to set the stage here to closed one. So what I'm going to do in order to do this is I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to call it opportunity stage or op stage. It's going to be a text, and it is going to have a default value. Let me pull that up real quick here. So the default value is going to be a proposal price quote. What this will do is that if we don't set the op stage, we're going to automatically default this, assuming that the op is in the proposal stage. So here we're going to be able to set this to something else. We're back to our assignment. Assignments set variable data. So in this case, we're going to set it to closed one. And then again, we'll connect this. It's going to come up and ask me which decision outcome. I'm going to leave it on yes. All right. Now, let's create our opportunity. Now, we have a couple of options for doing this. One, we have these quick actions. We have a new opportunity. And this gives us all of the fields that we can fill in. And we can fill this in and create the opportunity. We're not going to use this one because this one won't give us our opportunity ID, which we need for the line items later. If we didn't care about that opportunity ID, if we weren't creating the line items, we could use this quick action and it just makes it a little bit faster to do. What we're going to do is we're going to use a record create. You'll notice there's record create and there's fast create. Later we'll use the fast create. All right, so here we are going to create our opportunity. So we're going to, again, tell it what type we're going to create. This is your object type. And then we're going to start filling in fields. So the first thing we're going to do is we have to have an account ID. We have a variable for that. We need the amount. This is going to be the total price. We're going to put in a closed date. And you can set this to, you could set up a formula, so you could set a week from now, a month from now. We're just going to simply, for this demonstration, set it to the current date. We're going to give it a name. And the name that we're going to give it is, we're going to give it the account name dash the date. So I've just put these two together so we can give our opportunity a name. And then the stage is going to come from that variable that we created, ops stage. So this is either going to be set to closed one or it's going to be set to the proposal. All right, and that's all we need in the fields that we're setting. And then down here you'll see assign the record ID to a variable. Again, we don't have a variable to hold it, so we're going to create one. We want to save that opportunity ID for when we do our line items. Okay. So now we're going to plug this in. And then from this assignment, I'm going to go right back into this record create. So this is going to assign that stage to closed, and then we're going to create the record. If I was to run it right now, we would go through those screens like we did before. It would create an opportunity. No line items yet, but we would get the opportunity there.
So Fred, we've got a question that popped up there real quick. When you're creating the opportunity, what if you have custom fields that are required on your page layouts? Are those required to create the opportunity from this flow?
Excellent question. If they are required on the page layout, they are not required in the flow. There's different levels of the data that is required in Salesforce. You have the UI level, which is a field layout, where you require it there. In code, we can set fields blank that are required on a field layout. Now, if we actually went into the field itself, I'm going to pull up our account here. If I actually went in here, I've got a couple of custom fields. If I set this required, then this always require a value in this field. Then we would have to require that in our flow. If this is not set, then we don't have to add it in our flow. That field validation is not going to fire if this is not set. So when flow runs, it's running as code. It is not running through as a UI. So again, the page layouts are not, the required fields on a page layout are not required. Required fields in the field definitions are, and it has to follow validation rules. So if you have a validation rule that prevents specific things, you could have an error in your flow. So for example, if we had a validation rule that makes it so that we can't do a negative quantity. If we put a negative quantity in our flow and we didn't check for that, then when we try to create the line item, we would have an error. That's an excellent question. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, let's see. Next, we are going to create our line item. Now, we're going to do this a little bit differently. Normally, what I would do is I would do another record create for the line item, but I want to show you how the fast create works. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create the line item as an S object. So I'm going to go in here to resources and add another S object variable. And again, this could be a variable or a collection. When we do a collection and we do the fast update, it's going to update all of the records. So this is going to be an opportunity line item. All right. And what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of step back a little bit. I want to put in, and I'll show you why. I'm going to put in another step right here after this last review screen. And we're going to do an assignment. This is where you can really get into some complicated stuff, some very complicated logic. We're going to set our line item data. So we've got a few things that we need to set. We need to set our height, our width, our depth, our quantity. We need to set all of that stuff that we got from the sales rep. And our colors. And there's two more things that we need to set. One of them is our price, and we want to do our total price. When I was building out my example flow, I actually did the unit price, and I ended up with an order that was $2 million because it was timesing 500 times $1,700. So we don't want to do that. We want total price, and we're going to let it figure out the unit price. You can only, when you're creating a line item, you can only set the total price or the unit price. You can't set both. And we're going to set the price book entry. So now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to fill in all of these fields. And you want to make sure on this one, we want to make sure that we're not selecting a line item variable, that we're selecting a screen input. Quantity. Color. Where? And this is not, I'm looking up the wrong field. We actually want the ID on our price book entry. Okay, so we've got all of our data there. What did we miss? Oh, I forgot the operators. What are we doing? Are we equaling, adding, or subtracting? These are all going to equals. All right. We're very getting there. Okay. I'm going to plug this in. All right, so now, after we've created our opportunity, we're going to do a fast create and create that line item. So now I'm just going to select this S-object variable. You'll notice when I did the create op, I set all of those fields here. When I did this one, I'm just simply using this variable. What we could do is we could do a loop and we could do a collection and create multiple line items. Maybe every order has specific things. Maybe you want to add a shipping line item and a tax line item to every single order. You could create that collection, do the fast create, and automatically add those to an opportunity. All right, and we're going to add one more screen at the very end of this. And all this one is going to be is simply a confirmation that the order was completed. We don't want to show the previous button. Once the order is completed, we don't want to go backwards. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to display the text. And all this is going to say is, give it a name. Order has been saved. All right, let's go ahead and
You
save
could
this.
also, from that screen, you could link to the order itself so that at that point somebody would have the option to go back to the account or to go to the new opportunity if they want.
Right. Yes. Yeah, we're not going to do that this time. Again, you'll see I've got the, yeah, we could just link straight to the opportunity. Grab my account ID again. I want to show you one more thing here. I'm purposely going to do this wrong, and it'll throw in this same error. These variable names in the URL are case sensitive. So I do have to type it in the same capitalization. If you can't remember how you did that, you can always go into your Flow Designer, click on Explorer, and it'll show you all your variable names. So we've got account ID. ID is capitalized. So let's go ahead and create this order. Let's do our 12 by 12 by 12 again. We'll select some colors. Some interesting ones here. Chartreuse, antique white, and dark goldenrod. It'll be a pretty box. And then we're going to set our total price. As we had 500 boxes, we're going to say $500. Has the client paid for this order? Let's go ahead and say yes. Oh, and now we have an unhandled fault.
You just hit finish, and so it restarted the flow without an account ID.
Oh, yes, I did. Thank you, Jim.
That's one thing to keep in mind. When you're doing that run from within your Flow Designer, anytime you hit finish, it automatically reruns the flow, but it will not pass anything that you previously had there. So it's a good way to test. You just have to remember what happens when you finish it.
Okay, so I'm at my account now. You can see here I have this new opportunity, Alligator Sports, May 13th. And this proposal quote. We'll have to check and see why this is. I believe I said that this was paid for.
Yeah, I thought you did too.
And no, this is the one that I did earlier. Hold on. Am I doing it? I might have used a different account. Nope. Okay, for some reason, let's try this again. For some reason, our order, I'm going to do a little bit of troubleshooting here. For some reason, our order did not save. No, this is coming up. Okay, so you're gonna get a little bonus for next week. We're gonna do a little bit of troubleshooting. For some reason, I'm getting an error here. So I'm going to add a screen that I can see the fault. It's probably something simple. I probably just missed a field. It's really easy to do that. So notice these were already connected to something else. When I dragged it to this new screen, I got fault lines. Not the kind that cause earthquakes. Okay. run through this really quick. All right. Let's see what we're coming up with here. We are still getting a fault, and it is not one of those.
Let's create the button and run it from an actual account, so we're not running into the manual process where it's relooping and starting over, and see if that helps.
Well, we can do that. We're not getting to the completed screen.
Right.
All right. We will troubleshoot this next week. We're not going to spend any more time. I'm going to go back to my original flow. This one works. I want to show you one more thing, and this is another reason why I used the S object for the line items. So I've added one more thing in here, add extra. And what this does is if the amount is over $500, we're going to go ahead and give the client an extra 10% on the quantity. So a little bonus if they're ordering a lot of product. And we could give them, instead of adding to the quantity, we could give a discount on the price or free shipping or something like that. I just decided we wanted to give them a few extra boxes to make the client happy here. So let's go ahead and run this one. So you see this is going to look exactly the same. I actually copied this flow as we went through and built it. Pick those colors again. Total price. I'm going to put in the $17.50. We're going to get that, run that extra quantity in there. Order has been recorded. So now we're going to go back to...
Hang on, Fred. We've got somebody saying they've lost the audio. If there's anybody that can hear me, please type the answer. Please type the word yes into the question box and send it to me so I can see how many people have audio. Okay, so we've just got to, looks like just one or two that have lost it then.
Okay. All right, I know if you've lost audio, you can't hear me. My suggestion for everybody else, if you lose audio, one of the things that works is to switch your audio option from mic and speakers to telephone and then back to mic and speakers. I've had that happen to me before, especially on VPN. While John's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. He's dealing with that audio issue. And now we've got our opportunity down here. Closed one. It's ready to go. Our line item is here. It's got, you see it automatically calculated that sales price so that we had our total price right. We have our quantity of 550. We had that extra 10%. Box height, width, depth, all the colors are there. This order is ready to go to fulfillment. Later, there's another step that we need to do, and we need to create the order fulfillment. We're actually going to do that in a later webinar using code. We could do the same thing here. We could create a flow to create this order fulfillment when an opportunity hits closed one. We're not going to, one of the things when you're calling flows from the process builder does not bulkify. So when you're updating one or two records, it's okay. When you do a bulk update, the process builder will fail when you're updating over 200 records. So we're going to do this order fulfillment. We're going to create that in code so that we're not running it through the process builder. All right, that is it. That is our flow. Our salespeople are ready to start using it and start making us some sales. All right, John.
All right, we've got a couple of.
Back.
Yep, we've just got a couple of questions here, real quick. We've got somebody asking, can I validate user input in a flow?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, good question. And we talked about that a little bit. You know, something like the validation rules, making sure that we don't have a negative quantity. So we're going to go in here and set that. Excellent question. You have right here input validation, and this is just going to simply be a formula. And it'll tell you right here if the formula is false, the text defined under error message is displayed to the user. So what we need is we need to make sure that quantity is greater than -1. We actually, let's do 0. We don't want to do, we want at least 1 box. We could set a minimum order limit if we wanted to of 100, but we're going to say we want at least 1 box, so anything over 0 is okay. I'm going to give it an error message. One of the things I learned about error messages is let the people know what they need to do to fix it, not just that there was an error. So we're going to tell them they have to enter quantity greater than 0. All right, so now let me save this. And you can do this on any of the fields. You notice earlier we set the required. We said these fields are required. We have to have values for them. Now we're going to set that validation. So now if I say my customer is going to order -50 boxes, it's going to throw an error just like it does on the page layout. You must enter a quantity greater than 0. So even if we put in 0, we're still going to get that same error. And because this is a formula field, you can validate it any way that you want to. We can say, let's go to price. We could put in a formula saying that our total price has to be greater than our quantity times, let's say 75 cents. Let's say we don't have any boxes that are less than 75 cents. And we could get pretty complicated on this. We could go, height, width, depth. So we could take our cubic size of the box times the quantity times a certain percentage to figure out what the minimum is for this total price. So now we have a validation rule that we have validation on that field that it has to be, our boxes have to cost the customer at least 75 cents or more. That was a fantastic question. Thank you. John, do we have any more questions?
I think that's all we have today.
Okay, I am going to turn it back over to you and we will finish up.
Yep. All right. Thank you for your participation, everybody. We really appreciate that. Upcoming webinar events that we have next week, May 20th, we're going to be talking about troubleshooting flows, where you'll see